Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the Gutshot podcast. Bit of a change from the norm. As mentioned, we have a guest today, and his name is Ravi Navaratnam, or rather Dr. Ravi Navaratnam, corporate man. And I think why we're talking to you today, Ravi, is because of your position in the Malaysian corporate sector. You head up the Malaysian Economic Association. So it matters because what happens around the world affects Malaysia as an externally traded nation. And we are here, I guess, to seek your views as to how global geopolitics and big macro developments are affecting Malaysia and, in fact, business in Southeast Asia. So welcome to the show, Ravi. And, of course, thank you for joining Sam and myself this morning. I think we can start the discussion with your views in the last 6 months, maybe, in terms of how the Trump economic policies have affected the rest of the world, and especially us in ASEAN in terms of the tariffs. And just, a headline, a summary of where you think the world is going.
Okay, first things first, let me be just clear that I'm actually not speaking for the Malaysian Economic Association. I'm the vice president, or even for my firm, H3, but I'm happy to share my views as a person which is really interested in economics. It's my views and how I see things. As a corporate person, we also do certain things in dealing with them. There are things which are short-term, and there are things which are long-term, okay? So short-term things, is of course, some of it is very basic economic theory, right? If there's high risk, you will actually expect, slow down because it's harder to invest, induced risk. So when there's so many shifts in policy, then what we're used to changes, right? So you can see a lot of running around, trying to respond. Basics also comes around this, right? So the countries that will survive, and if Malaysia is going to survive, is the ones who can adapt well. So you can see very quickly how people have adapted to how they deal with Donald Trump. Now you can see how President Zelensky, in his first meeting, and how he's changed going forward. Yeah, a lot of it is, pandering to the President Trump's needs. So that seems to work, and UK is probably very good at that. All the countries now are rolling out the red carpet when he comes around trying to get deals, etc., and so on. So if you look at it, so short term, if there was a trajectory for growth, it would slow down. We would expect some slowing down from its trajectory. It doesn't mean it's a recession, right? That's the first thing you got to understand. Now, then there's an issue around long term. How does these things affect long term things, right? Now, I can imagine, even from the president's view, that there are things that they feel strongly about, and they rightfully, how they perceive things, how they make sense of the world could be different from how we make sense of the world based on our history and so on. So this is a lot of science around this and research. A guy called Wyack had done a lot of research around this and how we make sense of the world. But what I do know is when you actually start dismantling institutions, and the research that obviously Ismaglu did, and they won the Nobel Prize in 2022, it actually tells you when you break down institutions, this one. So there's a very good debate around the world. Are rich countries rich because they have good institutions, or do rich countries have good institutions? This is a very important question. Which way is the causality of this thing? And the research finally did show it very, very well, and that's why they won the Nobel Prize for it, is that actually you become rich by having good institutions. Now, how much is the United States beginning to destroy its institutions? Yeah. And how could it affect it? So you could do many, many studies on this, and there are probably, you can do a lot of economic research around it. And some of the things that you could do around that is it, a lot of things say, is it communism versus democracies or whatever it is? You can have a democracy, but you can have lousy institutions, right? And that means this, and sometimes.
Well, we've seen a lot of that.
But there are more. Obviously, authoritarian governments with worse institutions than democratic countries. Yeah, so they're generally this one. So you can see countries like the U.S. right previously, and they actually have even like Malaysia for today, right? What's happened? Forget the criminal part of the legal system, right? Forget the criminal part, of the legal system, but the commercial part is judiciary, right? It's really just related to the judiciary, right? Judiciary has improved tremendously, especially with the previous Chief Justice. And there was a lot of concerns about the judiciary here. But if you and I, as a businessman, Shamsul, you know very well, if we have a dispute, okay, other than breaking people's legs, which we hopefully don't get around involved in that, we all want to go to court and have our day. 99% of the time, we just shake hands, we know each other, we do business. But there are times the contracts go wrong. We have to go to court. At least today, we all believe we can go to court in Malaysia, be it even the most powerful people. For a commercial case, the hearing can go you get a fair hearing in court. And that's tremendously important for doing business, right? And so, again, a lot of things, and life's a lot easier if you know the rules, right? So the tariff is today 20% and it's 25% and 30%. It's just difficult, right? So and a lot of the things, and I was just, before the show, we actually, I just mentioned to you, I had the distinct privilege of working with, Richard Reardon, when Malaysia wrote its first financial services plan way back in 1997.
He was the Securities Commission
chairman, and he was in the Old Man Bush's
administration
as well. Yeah, he was in the cabinet. So anyway, and one of the things that he shared with me at length is, he said, unlike everybody thinks America's laissez-faire, and it's no, they do a lot of planning. I mean, just if you imagine, if you just watched that movie on Oppenheimer, you'll see just the amount of planning and how America can pull resources together to get things done. So even when, again, a lot of the research, when they did Obamacare, there was a lot of thinking, a lot of econometric studies before policies even. Now, that's one of the problems we probably lack in emerging markets. We probably have leaders who don't know about it, and probably we don't even have technical people which don't know enough to actually advise the leaders what to do. So a lot of policies driven by gut feelings, but that's the right show for it, I suppose. And hubris, or what I think it is. I believe this to be it. And one of the things that Malaysian Economic Association is very involved in trying to get people to start thinking about is let's start doing things more around, based on evidence. Proper analysis, research, policy which is driven by evidence. So you're coming back where we think it is going. In the short term, it's a slowdown. And if you probably look at 7 years down the road, if this continues, we probably might say, what a missed opportunity it's been because of all this thing. So in the short term, of course, the US is now benefiting from tariffs, and the budget is being reduced, or at least they got more money into the government coffers. But does that mean it's going to be good for the long term? Perhaps not.
When you say long term, are you talking about America specifically, or you're talking about global?
I would say the globe as well, because one is, like it or not, America is still the largest economy in the world.
Right.
Yeah. When you look at, the other day somebody said, China is going to start exporting to Brazil and Africa. Okay. Yeah, the exports have increased, but has anybody sat back and looked at those countries? Do they have a trade deficit? It's one thing to sell to America with a trade deficit, because I'm quite happy to take US dollars. What am I going to take from Brazil? What am I going to take from Nigeria?
Exactly.
Yeah, what am I going to
I've
take?
been saying that too.
Yeah. So again, so once these countries get into the dual problem of budget and trade deficit, what are you going to export to these countries? So for us, all of us, like it or not, we're all happy with American dollars. Yeah, America runs a big deficit, but we're still happy to hold it, right? Or for that matter, what we call monetary sovereigns, maybe UK sterling, yens, euros, we're probably happy, Sing dollars. And to an extent, for us, we are fortunate that people are happy enough to hold ringgit. Singapore, for example, Monetary Authority of Singapore, one of their largest holdings is Malaysian ringgit, right?
Really?
So, it used to be. I don't know if it still is, but it used to be, right? They always hold
Why
it.
would they hold it when
No,
they
because
can't
a lot
trade
of their trade. No, they can. They can trade. A lot of the trade, buying things, stuff go with Malaysia. So,
Okay.
So it's an important currency to them, and I think central banks in Southeast Asia probably hold it. I'm not sure, but it's been a reasonably good currency over a long period of time. We've got a good central bank. So again, when you talk about institutions and you talk about how important institutions are, we have good institutions. I know some of us have reservations on what we're going to say, but we have EPF till today. I don't take out my EPF money. I'm confident enough that 6% return is very, very safe. Yeah, we have good institutions in central bank. Some of the things more recent with one or two of the institutions have been more tricky, but
May I jump a bit since you're talking about the institution and the short-term impact on the institutions. Let's focus on the American institution changes that Trump administration is doing, right? I am of the view that the institutional changes that is being carried out is actually a necessity. It's a short-term. For lack of a better word, for opposition, you would call mayhem. But I think if I were to look at it, I would call it a restructuring of broken institutions with respect to how much politicization that has happened within the last maybe 2 decades. That's my point of view from looking at how even the Justice Department, especially in after 2016, after his election, right? That went after Trump, which was never happened before in the history of America, where law was used to go after a political opponent in that manner. Also, I think there's a lot of so I think, to me, it's a restructuring of the institution itself to be more proactive to business. So I don't know. I mean,
I'll probably. I mean, look, it's too big a subject for any of us to know in detail, right?
Right.
It's just too big a subject. But if I were to raise concerns, and there's enough reason to worry, I would say one is the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
All right, and what's been going on there? That's
what do you think is going on there?
No, because it's always been so far. Most of the thinking today is the monetary policy should be independent of government. Okay, monetary policy should be independent of government. That means I don't get a boost on cutting interest rates and run inflation out just because I need to time it with certain election ideals. And that's been a big thing for the longest term. And the countries which have had separation of the monetary institution, the monetary policy by the independent central bank, have done well. So that's pretty clear. So if you're saying we're running at inflation at a certain percentage, and no, I need growth to happen because I just think so. That one, of course, there was a lot of concerns. Markets did move, yeah. And, you got to let it's one thing to say, I say it's 25 plus 25. And so far, in fact, if you look at it, the new nominees came in, it's not off a lot, right? But suddenly if you're saying, we're going to cut 200 basis points, then of course you'll get concerned, right?
Yeah.
So again, how much has been played up and how much it is, even the new people coming in, how far is it going to shift? It's not going to decide. There's an old story of Volcker when he had the higher rates. And I think they called Ronald Reagan, and Ronald Reagan said, he said, come to the White House, and said, I'm not coming, I'm independent. Yeah. And Reagan then went to see him, but brought the Constitution with him and said, who really has the power. But I think the laws have changed on that, and the Congress, can change laws. But as it stands, that would be one of the areas to be concerned. The other one would be on the drugs, on testing of drugs, and how you make decisions on drugs.
Okay.
That would be a concern if you're dismantling stuff that's been there for a while, and if there are, it's done more on, not properly done scientific studies. Or at least that's one side of the concerns. Okay. That would be two real areas that, it affects everybody.
Okay.
And I would be duly concerned. Now, is everybody had too much of a right to be processed on immigration and could get away with nonsense or whatever it is, or too much of it and too much this one? Possibly, yeah. Again, it's beyond my pay grade. I wouldn't be able to tell you that. There are obviously people who are supportive of what's going on the borders and so on, or some will say how it's being done is an issue. So different things, or trade, yeah. How you deal with your long institutions in terms of all the Bretton Woods institutions. I probably agree they're all bureaucracies and not as effective as they should be, and probably needed a good shock to the system. Yeah. So a lot of the Bretton Woods institutions probably need to be re-looked at. It's been around for 80 years, right?
I
So they probably need some re-overhaul anyway.
Yeah, I think we've done. Actually, personally, we know each other. We've done 2 restructurings together of corporations, and my mind sometimes come to the point of where you're coming from on the restructuring side. That's where I'm coming from when I look at it. I think certain things that has been informed from the mainstream media gives that kind of impression to a lot of people about what was before and what is now, right? In my opinion, for example, what I saw was the Federal Reserve was very much trying to help Biden in the last election. You know, I mean, we've got at that one point that the highest inflation rate was at 9%. You know, and then you have a situation where actually at this point I'm sort of puzzled, and maybe you can help me put this together. You've got Fed rate at about at more than 4%. What, 4.2? 4.5%?
4%, yeah.
4.5?
4 to 4.25, yeah, gone, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now they've cut by 25 basis points. So that's we're looking at now 4.25, right? When you look at Europe and you look at Singapore, it's way lower. And their economy, actually you look at Singapore economy, they're doing very well. Yeah? So you start asking yourself then, actually, was it not politicized before? So that's the first thing when I look at the Federal Reserve. The second part is, and whether then this is, I've sort of been, I don't know how you felt about it, Ravi, but I've been extremely impressed by Scott Bessent and how he has been articulating their policies. The second part of it is, for example, when you talk about judiciary, and what was that? You were talking about judiciary as the second part? Or?
No, I'm talking about drugs.
Oh, drugs. Yeah, there you go. About drugs. So you're talking about the CDC and the pharma. COVID woke me up, Ravi. COVID truly woke me up about what I saw, to me at least. And that is because you got stuck in the house for 2 years, right? And being the you know how I am, being partly an organic chemist type of thinking, right? I just did not get the policy that was being implemented. I was not happy about having my myself to be vaccinated and having to sign off a waiver from the pharmaceutical companies when I know for certain I'm the guinea pig. Then, when I look at what was happening with respect, because I was having diabetes, right? And actually I did my own research, and instead of following the standard American diet that's taken out by Health and Human Services over maybe 4 decades, I basically went the other way around and I reversed completely my diabetes. I don't even have to take any prescription drugs anymore. And my obesity is gone. I lost 25 kilo in 8 months. I've never felt healthier. So I think those especially when you talk about drugs, right? I think that institution to me has been captured by the pharma lobby. I just got back from the States last month, right? It just reminded one thing to me, when I watch a football commercial, when I watch a football game, out of 4 commercials, there's going to be one big commercial by the pharmaceutical company. So the pharma lobby is immense, and I think that place needs a total cleanup. So the third part that you keep, so these are the things that I feel that it's a short-term restructuring, but then after that we'll have to see how the long-term play out. Okay. So I don't know. That's my.
Okay, if I ask you a simple question, what's the inflation rate in Europe?
What is that?
What's the inflation rate in Europe?
I'm not that much of a follow-up on the inflation rate.
So when we look at so you talked about the European rates and this, and inflation is well below 2% in Europe. Yeah?
Right.
So therefore, the European Central Bank can cut the interest rates. That's for sure, right? All right, that's the first thing, right? So again, we must be understanding policies and a little bit more.
In the first place, how would you formulate inflation?
Sorry?
How do you formulate inflation? This
Inflation is a basket
right?
of goods. Yeah.
Yes, and that basket, the formulation can be...
Why is their inflation rate so low if
because
that's
the
the
demand
case?
is low, and the money supply is probably not as much, and the demand factors are probably a lot lower because America is in a boom. Now, one of the reasons that, again, which is being said around whether this one or not, you see, Donald Trump had already expanded the money supply. We know this from monetary policy, right? He'd expanded this one with COVID. Biden came in, of course, with the usual Democrat mandate or spend, and of course, infrastructure in America is today is pretty. You go to a U.S. airport, it's awful compared to any airport around the world, right? So there was obviously money needed to be spent on infrastructure, but it was the wrong timing to spend. So you got money supply, huge amount, and then further supply, and your deficit ran up to 7%. Of course, you're going to have inflation, right? And then of course they all thought it would. Rightfully or wrongfully, the Fed thought it would come down quicker than it is because it was a shock and it would come down quicker. It didn't.
What do you mean, inflation?
Inflation would come down quicker. So they actually had to further increase it. We can all speculate unless we have proof that, the Fed was directly involved in having covert conversations with the Biden administration and did things, which I would hardly believe because there's no evidence of that. And then when you come to Singapore, Singapore is one of the most unusual countries in the world. Goh Keng Swee did this many, many years ago. Singapore controls inflation by currency, not by interest rates. That's a very different model. It's the only country in the world that I know of which actually does that, right? And also inflation is very, very low in Singapore. So actually...
Inflation is low in Singapore?
Yeah, it is low. Yeah, it is. And when you talk about the numbers, look, you can say whatever you like about inflation, right? You're comparing last year with this year. Whether the basket is good or bad, that's for a debate for another day, right? But it's not absolute numbers, it's relative
it's
number.
It's a relative number.
So that's why when you say, what's a basket, it's
a rate.
It's a meaningless discussion, right?
Well, yeah, so the way governments calculate inflation is in itself open to intense scrutiny, right? Because
No, it's not.
It's because what you put in the basket, right? If you talk to any ordinary Singaporean with an average household income, they will tell you that prices have gone through the roof.
Okay. And there's
So
a
how
lot
can you say
more.
that
There's a lot
inflation
more
is-
thinking today around that than it was just in the Phillips curve from the 1970s, right? It does not wage and inflation anymore, right? There's a lot of behavioral science here. So now suddenly people think inflation is very high in America. Why? Because Trump put tariff on coffee. All right, and that has a direct relationship because you're buying coffee all the time, so it's in your mind, right? So there's a lot of things which is behavioral. And there's a lot of things which are...
So that's the inherent problem with inflation, right?
No.
Because
The numbers method is perfectly fine, at least in my mind, right? And, and you keep changing the basket. Now, is it the average Mr. Malaysian which buys these goods? I don't know, right? But if you look from one quarter to another quarter, it tells us something. It tells us something from this year to last year. That it definitely tells us, right?
Yeah, but what's in the basket?
It doesn't matter. The absolute rate is...
It does matter.
No, the absolute rate doesn't matter.
Because
The absolute rate doesn't matter.
It's a guesstimate of what people are buying, right? And that basket is fallacious. It doesn't represent the real... In fact, I would say that inflation is one...
How do you know it doesn't represent?
Well, your inflation and my inflation is different, right?
Yeah, but country can't run on your inflation and my inflation.
Correct.
It has to have a means of what's right for general population.
So
that's the problem.
I do tend to...
So you're trying to capture the a whole country's
What would you suggest
population.
otherwise?
Well, let's put it this way, without going into this
No.
rabbit hole.
No.
What would you suggest otherwise?
No, this is a good question, right?
What would you
Because the
suggest
thing
otherwise?
is, the policymakers, for example, the central banks of the world, right?
Yeah.
They hinge a lot of their decision making on key numbers, and one of those key numbers is inflation. When that core component of number is open to question in terms of its computation, then by correlation, if you got rubbish going in, you might have rubbish coming out, and that's why maybe sometimes people say, interest rate policy is off the mark, right? To me, and I would say that between you, the three of us in this room, and of course Wing as well, all of us have got different inflation numbers because you buy different things. You buy different things, I buy different things.
Okay.
Chang.
I just have to beg to disagree with you.
Yeah,
That's how I
okay.
move on,
All
right? Because for me, we have one OPR rate and we have one inflation rate. Unless we can have 50 million economics of each one person, that's not possible, right? So let's.
I
move
think
on.
I tend to agree with Ravi on this one, Because why? On the absoluteness of an inflation basket, right? It is very difficult for you to put on everybody. So what you do is you average, or you sort of like average
So what I'm
out,
saying is that
and then you
the
look at
CPI
the difference between that's CPI, between
inflation is
one
CPI.
year to another, and that's where you look at whether inflation rate goes up or inflation rate goes down. So I think without going to the rabbit hole of this.
Okay, can I just give you where you're probably right and give you some this and where you've got actually a good point, and I'll share with you. Look at Bank Negara's report this year. It's very well done on that very, very point you're talking about. Okay.
Bank Negara Malaysia.
Have you read the report every year? I read it every year.
No, I don't.
It's a very good report. It's very, very well done. It's very well written, right? And one of the most important things is, okay, if you talk about inflation, right, and there's a methodology, it's a huge methodology in how it's done, right? And there's something called a deflator as well inside. So this phone goes up in value, but where they calculate the inflation, it may have not gone up because they say, in theory, it's got more capacity, it works faster, so it's considered actually coming cheaper. So there's a deflator in it, all right? So one of the simple questions if I asked you, the other one which you want to talk about is per capita income. Yeah, per capita income. You know, it doesn't happen if I won't mention. I've got on the podcast. I wouldn't mention names, but you know, we have some names of some super billionaires. If all the money went to him and none of us got the money, Mr. X, the super billionaire, on average the per capita income is increased, but none of us got richer, right? Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed.
That's the problem with India's economy, if you ask me.
I don't know, India or whichever country. Yeah.
But I mean, definitely when I look at at India's number.
Can I just let me finish this point I'm trying to make? Okay, so per capita income's gone up, and inflation's going down, and this is the point you're really making. We should all be feeling richer, correct?
No,
but we don't.
No, the point I was really making is it is inherently troublesome for policymakers, for example, those dictating monetary policy, to hinge their decision on several key numbers, one of which is inflation.
No.
And inflation is inherently, to me, fallacious because the basket itself doesn't reflect. It cannot really truly reflect.
Okay, and then let me finish
people.
on this one. So you'll see why it's relevant to what you were just saying. Okay, so in theory, we should all be better, and that this one is because of that relative number. It's got a this one, and I will come back to this a little bit more later on why there's rational in inflation and policy rate. Yeah. So one of the things that we know is that look. So what Bank Negara actually did, they then looked at B40 median income.
Okay, so B40 is the bottom 40.
Yeah, B40 is median income. And you can look at the graph from the central bank. It's very well done. B40 income is just stagnating or hardly growing. Nowhere near the average per capita income. The second point is they looked at the things which are important to inflation. Food, transportation, and security. And that one is growing a lot faster. Like it or not, this phone is part of inflation also. We do buy it. Yeah, you can't say it's not. And it has probably a deflator and it brings down the number, right? And they actually looked at it. That's why people are worse off now. Because the average at the B40 level, the median is not going up because it's not influenced by some super rich guy getting a lot of money. And the thing which so they're actually aware of it. But on the other hand, if you look at the policy, you can go back 40, 50 years, the basic inflation number. And like I said, there's a lot more science around inflation now than it was just than the mere Phillips curve and interest and wages, right? Which is the two main issues that, the central banks have. And by no means would claim to be a central banker or, on this one. But are the two main mandates to make sure that we have employment and low inflation. That's the mandate, right? Where does 2% come from? That was a number they came up from. No one, it's just been there, right? 2%. But on average, over years and years of data, we've learned that to be pretty okay. People are generally okay kind of number. And similarly, and they look at interest rates and this one, they can see as they tune the interest rates up, the inflation does come down. And it's not like the late 80s where, Volcker had to go up almost 17, 18%, right? To get this. And it affected all over the world. If you remember, in the old days, we used to have finance companies in Malaysia, and you went to Supreme Finance, you could get 13% interest, right? Yeah, you could get it, right? So there is these things. This is not natural sciences, huh?
Yeah.
Which is V is equal to IR. When I learned engineering, it's been V is equal to IR forever, right?
Well, let me pull it back. Let me pull it back to the talk of I mean, we've touched the institutional changes to a certain extent, and how I look at it and how you look at it.
Yeah.
Right. But let me pull it back to the macroeconomics of on just a touch on inflation before I close it. I think one of the biggest thing that Trump did was to deregulate, because he's looking at three aspects, right? Trade, bringing down taxes, and bringing down deregulation, and that allowed actually also further drilling to happen and production to happen, which allows for energy prices to come down. Okay, in that regards, then it comes to the tariff talks that we are talking about. To me, it's also a rebalancing of trade, and here comes the long and the short impact of it. As you rightly put, for the American economy is still the largest economy that people want to export to.
Oh, we're happy to have US dollars.
Yeah,
We're happy to have US
exactly.
dollars. It's a reserve currency, yeah.
Which means that for those who are fighting for that market, they have to be competitive, and they have to swallow some of the import rates. If you ask me, for example, I did brought this up. I thought it was quite interesting that Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, that were doing, and Indonesia, that say, for example, textiles and whatnot, are all approximately the same tariff rates. So you guys fight among each other, right? And that actually, in essence, why energy and actually also the other part of importation into US, in spite of the tariff rates, did not spike the inflation the way it's been talked about, that it would even cause a recession. Remember when he was talking about tariff in the early parts? Then the other part is, so in the longer term, actually the world has got to adjust. And what I found is, actually, we were talking before, about middle income trap, the so-called middle income trap of developing countries, or what they call resource, the curse of resource country. I think what the tariffs has actually shown is, if you cannot adjust, like what you just said just now, right, quick enough to it, and the only adjustment you have to do, which is quick enough, is to make your economy more efficient, more productive, and actually the biggest part of it is you got to cut out all the corruption as much as you can. The biggest problem with developing country, to me, is basically corruption, because corruption takes away treasury from productive economic activity. What do you say to that?
Okay, I think one of the things that you got spot on, and we should be talking a little more.
Right.
And I think the one thing I must, I won't say coal, beautiful coal, but, I would say on energy and what he talked about, Germany and the United Nations, I think I would probably agree heavily with Donald Trump.
Please elaborate on that.
Excessive immigration.
Okay.
Yeah, which doesn't gel with the culture of Germany, doesn't make sense. And same with the UK to that extent.
And France as well.
Yeah, and UK, which I know pretty much
UK,
better.
you're very familiar, yeah.
And UK
maybe you can
so
expand on that as well.
And, look, in terms of, doing reform and all, I went to university in the time when Mrs. Thatcher was Prime Minister. And it's politically totally incorrect to say you're a supporter of Mrs. Thatcher. It's totally incorrect, Yeah, it probably throw eggs at you and so forth, right? It probably still say that today, but UK had, after Mrs. Thatcher left, and whatever Labour and Tony Blair can say, they had 17 years of uninterrupted growth. Can you imagine for a developed country to achieve that? And that's reform done it. One of the things that about Mrs.
And she did disrupt a lot, didn't she?
She got rid of the coal mines and things like that. And a lot of it was actually done, right? And there was probably a restructuring in the UK economy to a great extent, and allowing businesses to thrive and all. So that's not new. Ronald Reagan also did that to a great extent. But I also think there's another side of the coin to that. Since the late 80s and when Ronald Reagan and Mr. Thatcher came in, the pendulum's probably swung too far to the side of the wealthy. Actually, there's probably a greater role and importance for government and social care.
Why are you condemning us?
Yeah.
Why are you condemning the two
So,
of us?
You know,
I don't know him, so I'm like...
So actually, I have a very good the ex-CIMB head of research. He had a lovely story he told me. He's back at Berkeley now, right? And he said his dad, he's from a well-to-do American family. Dad was in a country club, right? And you know, and they're obviously probably Californians, probably a bit left in their ways and thinking, right? And he said dad was playing golf in the usual country club. One rich guy comes in, kind of saying, why are we giving all this money to all these poor folk, you know? They're just, you know, they'll get fat and they're lazy bums, they're good for nothing. Why are we paying taxes, right? And he said, you know what it's called? And if you want to look further, just look at Kathmandu last few weeks. Yeah? Jakarta.
You're talking about Nepal.
Yeah, but you know, don't presume it doesn't exist elsewhere. Don't presume.
No. I think...
And in the wealthiest countries, don't presume, right? UK had a little bit of a shock, but the time kids time up, put it down very quickly this time, right? So it is, and this is some of the things that, you know, policymakers need to think, right? It's not good enough for me to be okay. And those days I used to be a big follower of Milton Friedman, right? And The Right to Choose. I used to watch his program every day when I was in school, right? Every week when it was shown in, you know, Hong Kong being the epitome of this one. But the one thing I want to come back is give me a little bit of time
Sure.
on the environment and oil and gas. And that one I'd like to just share with you. And, you know, we both are heavily involved in working with these companies, right? So, you know, and for me to take a different view, and I know I was in Singapore. I used to work for Seagate in Singapore, and one of the things that, you know, there used to be debates, and I hadn't been to Hong Kong, and of course there was a lot of debate about Singapore and Hong Kong. Singapore, where the government and Lee Kuan Yew is a very efficient socialist. Actually, that's what he is, an extremely efficient socialist, pragmatist, right? So, you know, he did a lot of things like, you know, UK had government housing, but it was rented. You know, Lee Kuan Yew said no, right? We'll have HDB. You own it. You look after it. Whereas if you rent it, you don't give a shit about it, right? So a lot of things are done around that. So they got a very good health system, a lot of school system. So it's actually very efficient socialism, actually, and it worked there, right? So there's a lot of debate going on in Singapore when I was there. Which one is better, Hong Kong or Singapore? My first trip was to Hong Kong was in 1994, and Hong Kong airport was at Kai Tak still. The plane. And it was never a direct landing, right? It actually had to make a 90-degree turn. And as it made the 90-degree turn, you could actually look into the apartments in Hong Kong. For me, the debate was over. Singapore's the right way to go. It's never Hong Kong. And, you know, Lee Kai-sheng and everybody being super rich. No,
I do think, though, I mean, going back to your point
Singapore may be boring. You know, that part I could accept, right? And Hong Kong's a lot more alive. But average Joe in Singapore is far better looked after than in Hong Kong, in my view. That's my personal view, right?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you on that. I mean...
But let's put that aside. And that's the one which is, I think, be really interesting. And I think that's the one people really need to be talking about. I think, you know, someone wrote the other day, and I looked at it, I won't mention his name, but a very, very well knowledgeable man, which I have tremendously. He said, ESG has had its day. And I think...
Can I give a clap?
And it's someone else said it. I'm quoting somebody else. I'm quoting somebody else, right? ESG has had its day. And if you look...
Thank you. And
I just looked at some research working with someone at Warwick Business School on the North Sea. And
why
the ridiculous taxes.
Why did he say that? Why did he say that?
And
Can
you
you
know,
elaborate?
You know... I mean, it's got to do... I'm probably going to give away the name, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But when we talked about the North Sea oil, right?
Right.
And Donald Trump talked about it.
Yes, he did in the UN.
And it is one of the large basins in the world.
Yeah.
Who else has a super basin?
Probably Guyana right now.
No, Malaysia and Terengganu. We should be going for it.
I've been saying this the last 4 years.
Full steam ahead. Yeah.
4 years,
How do
Ravi.
we get that oil out? Yeah. How do we get the gas out?
Yeah.
So, and I agree with Donald Trump on this. Countries that do well have cheap energy. Generally speaking. I mean, Singapore is accepted as a very small island.
Singapore is fueled by money laundered all over the region.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay. I wish you good luck when you're at Changi Airport next time. Yeah. But other than that, a lot of countries, Germany did well because you got the cheap gas from Russia, right? And a lot of countries. Okay, Japan may be the exceptions in the, but they were highly innovative. Yeah, they had import oil, but high value. But they also have good hydroelectric. Yeah, you never forget that Japan has. When we learned geography in those days, Japan has good hydroelectric power, right? And of course nuclear and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So, and so even France has nuclear power. So when Germany gave up its nuclear power plants, it's really bad. Yeah, it's really bad, right?
France as well.
No, France has actually gone to third generation nuclear power plant.
Yeah,
they are the most advanced.
But I mean, they went a lot on. All this Western Europe went a lot.
Germany
on
is the one you're talking about, but France is the exception. And of the three countries who've got third generation nuclear power plants: U.S., France, China. Okay, so this is low cost energy. So that one is absolutely true, right? And as a country, we are blessed with cheap energy.
Yeah.
We are blessed with cheap energy,
Yeah.
right? How we use it to our advantage, is it, whether it's going to be all about data centers or what, I'm not sure. But again, there is a huge need for power, and we are blessed with cheap energy, and we should take advantage of it. Yeah. So, when they talked about UK and 70% taxes for, you're in the oil and gas industry, we are there. Who makes that kind of money to reinvest? These laws came when oil was $140 or whatever, per barrel in the Ukraine war. That's all past. It's all past. Yeah.
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 So I think again it goes.
So this is where you think some of the things that you shock. Yeah, it is possible. Even when you talk about carbon, coal. Again, I'm not at the cutting edge of the sciences, but I do know there's some things going on in carbon capture, right? So whether or not these things are going to be as dirty as they used to be, who knows, right? Yeah. So if there are cheaper ways to do it using new technologies, don't make it like a religion. You can't see anything else. It's my way or the highway. Be open to new ideas. Yeah. So if Donald Trump says coal is possible with new technology, who knows? There may be beautiful coal. Who knows? I don't know. But there must, but you don't say, no, coal is a never. No,
Yeah.
never.
No,
you can't say it's never. Yeah.
The way I've seen the left side of the political equation in America, and also and with that the Democratic Party, is their whole ideology or their whole political system, political opposition seems to be anything Trump says is something they have to go against. But here's the thing. Even when I've talked about ESG for a long time, so I'm quite happy to hear that particular statement from you.
It's not me. I'm recording somebody else. Yeah?
You're recording somebody else. Okay, fair enough. The fact that you would repeat that, that's an interesting development. The second part is actually when you look at this whole idea of unorthodox thinking about science, so to speak, right? Just think about science in itself. A lot of things that are your side is in physics, right? I personally also love physics. The problem is I do see in the theoretical physics business, actually, the money, the research goes where the money goes because that's popular. If you go into an unpopular thinking, you don't, or as you rightly put when you say, being a Thatcher, a Thatcher supporter is politically incorrect.
At least in university, of course, you had enough support.
Correct.
She won
It's the same way
4
here
elections,
today.
right? So you can't quite say that.
It has come to a point.
It
has come to a point where actually, if you question, the last time, that's why I said COVID opens my mind up, because the minute you ask questions about certain policies related to COVID, you got labeled as a vaccine denier. When you start questioning about the science of climate change, you become a climate change denier. There's no room to question, and that's not how science works. That's the problem I see.
I think there was a guy who actually spoke, a physicist which actually spoke on this very recently, Nobel Prize-winner, I think, on questioning some of that data, right?
Yeah.
But on vaccines, I think the evidence is pretty strong. The faster...
That's based on the mainstream saying.
No. I mean, again, yeah, but
It
you can't...
depends on which vaccines.
No. Can you say at that time, you can go and do your own research and forget the random trials that you did, which showed that the data was, that you'll get less chance of getting COVID if you do that. Just look at the countries which initiated the vaccine first from the countries that took it slower, right? Definitely you can see the number clearly drop in the UK, one of the first countries to put the vaccines through, and good vaccines, not just some of the vaccines in China are less effective. When they put the good vaccines in, the number's coming off. That's, it's called a difference in difference method. You can definitely see it. Yeah, there's no question about it. So I wouldn't go into a debate on whether the vaccines work. I wouldn't go into a debate, but I think
because I may have another variable, because always when you look at science, right, you look at all the variables, and there's another variable called herd immunity, which is a very real thing when we talk about.
It didn't change in the 1 month or 2 months or the 6 months. It didn't change, right? So when the vaccine came, you could definitely see a change. And when they did this one, there was no herd immunity when they did the testing of 30,000 people.
How do we know that?
You show herd immunity? I'll tell you the other side. Can you prove herd immunity? That's just speculation. I can say maybe God came down and made all these people, safe from vaccine. Just as much as you can't prove it, I can't prove it.
There you go.
No, but whereas the science, on the other hand, on the difference in difference approach and the randomized control trial, there's a science behind it. Yeah? And it's proven. That's simple.
Okay,
yeah?
We'll agree to disagree on that part.
Okay. And unfortunately, that's fine. You can't convince everybody with science, right?
I'm really not a believer nowadays of what you call the science, because what I found is actually in my own personal experience is that that's not how science works. It doesn't work with the science. It's about science is basically, even if you prove one thing wrong, or one variable wrong, there goes the science.
No, you got to ask yourselves, right? I mean, there's a whole process to this, right? They did the trial. I mean, if you think about fraud and things like corruption and all, to make this fraudulent, how complicated it'll get. You need to get the doctors in cahoots, the patients, 30,000 patients in cahoots. So many people to cheat, to actually make the randomized control trial be cheated. Then you have to publish it, and then you got to put it in your papers, and it goes through reviews. I mean, just think which is more plausible of the two, that's all.
Well,
for me, it's a simple question. The answer is pretty straightforward.
I'll have an example. The only thing is I don't want to go into the rabbit hole of it, right?
Yeah. But that's all I'm saying. It's which is more plausible. Yeah, that's all.
Anyway, let's go back to our theme of what we were gonna
but this is the critical thing.
Yeah.
You see, if we're going to take views on what is completely not plausible just because I think it is, that's fine. It's a democracy, it's a freedom of speech, that's fine. But when we're driving policy, when we're making major decisions at government, I'm no longer involved in government or in a government agency or anything like that. But where we can write and, like you said correctly, influence. Isn't the point he made is that basket's not good. It's not good. It's not the policymakers don't know, but you got to ask what are the better alternatives. Because when we make a suggestion and say something's no good, we also must have what can we do better.
Yeah.
Okay. And I always remember this. On the day of the 2018 general elections, right? We've always been saying, okay, even for America and most of these elections, right? It's not the government I like to have, in Malaysia, it used to be UMNO or anything but UMNO, right? In UK, it used to be Tory or Labour. In America, it's Democrat or Republican. In India, it's Congress or BJP, whatever it was, It's not, I want this super government. It's at best we only have a choice of two, generally speaking, or probably some of the European countries come ungovernable because it's too small, fragmented governments, right? So for us, or for America, people rightfully or wrongfully thought of the two choices they had, Donald Trump is duly elected. That's it. And in his 4-year term, he has the right within the laws that are in the United States to do what he wants. Now, of course, he can't get reelected, but how he performs, there's a feedback mechanism. If it doesn't go well, by midterm, he probably will lose the Congress, and be harder to get things done. And then when it comes to the Republicans trying to put a new candidate out there at the next presidential election, and if things really do start going bad, and we can speculate where it's going to go, and of course we make investment decisions and things based on that. For me, at least, I think, rightfully or wrongfully, the two countries with stronger institutions in Southeast Asia, and ASEAN is supposed to be growing, best two is Malaysia and Singapore.
Yeah, I agree with you
Malaysia
on
and
that
Singapore,
part.
full stop.
Yeah.
No need to look at all the other countries. Just if you're a foreign investor in America, super good. If you're super, you can afford your very expensive labor cost is very, very low portion of your deal, and you want to send your kids to the most expensive school. You want to have the most expensive hospitals. Blah blah. Fly Singapore Airlines first class. Put in Singapore. We want to do more pragmatic business, cheaper. Your own personal. Kuala
Malaysia
Lumpur
is
is
the
open.
best. Yeah.
Kuala Lumpur is open.
Yeah.
You can still fly Air Asia to the rest of Asia. May not have to, you can still go to good international schools, not as expensive as Singapore. Still good to hospitals. This one, your family can live in much nicer apartments. Crime, not as low as Singapore, but probably a lot better than most international cities in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, going back to that, then actually they made an announcement of the GDP.
Who's they?
I think Treasury did an announcement today or last night, according to their time, which was a bit too high for my initial thought. I thought that 2025, the projection would be looking at around 3%, and then it should ramp up by 2026 to it wouldn't surprise me at 3.8, But at this stage, they've gone up from 3.2 to a revision of 3.8%, right? So going on that basis, Ravi, where do you think it's really heading, whether this year or next year? Because I thought that especially with the reining of government spending in America, and also the cutting up of with the deregulation also involved actually getting rid of a lot of the civil service, right? That that the GDP would be not as robust this year. Why is the number like that?
Okay, so what is GDP? What's the formula? What's the formula?
Basically, income plus debt.
No, that's not the formula.
Okay,
It's C plus G plus I plus X minus M. Right? You learn this first. That's how you calculate it, right? It's okay. All right. So the question is, and a lot of that earnings, right, comes from. Okay, there are a couple of things that, we are unusual times. Okay, and that's why it's very hard to predict.
That's why I want to hear you.
Okay, it's unusual times.
Right.
So who's making the big I income? The Magic 7 are doing it, isn't it? Yeah, NVIDIA's profits are going through the roof. So if NVIDIA's profit is going through the roof and Jensen Huang is getting richer, doesn't mean American Joe is getting richer. Same thing we talked about earlier. All right? So it's possible, this one. But if you lost your government job, it's going to be tough going. So normally employment and reduction in employment would have ended up in lower consumption, right?
Yeah.
So again, like I said, this one is
consumption is part of
and then
GDP
the other
as
thing,
well.
then consumption. And let's face it, in America today, a lot of people invest in shares, and there's a wealth effect, right? I will never spend. I'm a bloody Salonist bugger, and I'll never spend money until I actually have realized profits. Right? But there are people who look at their brokerage statement and say, last week I had 4 million, now it's 10. I go and spend, man. I'm super rich. I got 10 million bucks. Tomorrow I'm stock market crash. I got no money. But, so people ask me, you got your portfolio in your office? I said, no. Until I got realized gain, we're not talking about spending money, So different people. But vast majority, and I've been in America, we'll look at this statement and spend. Right, so consumption is up because of that. So, like I said, unusual periods, and you're right when you talk about sciences, different factors can correlate. And this is the problem with social sciences. Economics is social science, right? It cannot be perfect, right? It can never be perfect, right? And it's even physics, right? And Newton's laws. Once the thing is so small, it doesn't work. Once it's too big, gravity, it doesn't work. And once you travel near the speed of light, it doesn't work. But is Newtonian physics good enough to get us to the moon and back? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. But social science, we get 30 to 40% correlation. So we consider good result already. 25 enough. 25 is enough. So when you
how do you think?
When you got a different thing on the health,
Yeah.
I think when they get up to the 90% and all, they are super happy with the results already.
So what do you think about? So where do you think the trajectory is coming? Because why? I mean, you don't want to have. You want to see your consumer market up, yeah, and then you want to see your exporting capability.
In America's case, if I comes down itself, it's a growth because it's X minus M, right? Imports, right? So if the imports is already reducing, that means it's growth to the GDP.
If the import is already reducing,
Yeah, it's a growth because X minus M what? That's the formula. That's
and
how it's
import is reducing.
probably. But then it'll eventually show up in lesser consumption later. So quarters down the road, you'll see lesser consumption. Then there's a lot of things on how stock is calculated, which is beyond my pay grade. And, people were buying stock earlier because of the tariffs. Like I said, this period, very hard to predict anything. And, honestly, if I ask you a simple question, right, capitalist market or controlled economy, totalitarian controlled economy, which is better?
You're talking about
Generally speaking, yeah.
Between what? Between
Capitalist economy, market economy.
I go capitalist all the way.
Market economy versus a controlled economy.
I go market economy.
Maybe just got it's richer countries are just like maybe they're all Christian values, and there's been a lot of the studies saying that maybe got to do with that, nothing to do with the market economy. How do you know? Maybe they're all in the temperate climates with better temperature, they can work better. Less their climates are better, less disasters. How do you know?
I think. I mean, of course, we come to a philosophy, right?
No, you can do an experiment. It would be absolutely an unethical experiment, but mankind did an experiment.
Okay.
It's called North Korea and South Korea. Same people, same geography, same everything. You look at a satellite photo today from 1948 and now, the difference between North Korea and South Korea is night and day. So it is possible, but in this case, you can do this good econometric science now that you can create counterfactuals, right? You can create counterfactuals using modeling techniques in computers. But unless you can have another parallel universe where Kamala Harris had won the elections, yeah, and then we compare the results, who's really say, right?
I think
then you can definitely say, because at this point, the economy was like that, and Donald Trump came president in this universe, and in the parallel universe, Kamala Harris came president. We could probably tell it. That's the only way you can be certain, right? Yeah.
Well, I think you touch on something which I'm quite more in agreement when you talk about institutions,
Yeah.
right? Having the right institution, and that actually, because the institutions are the one that in essence regulate that so-called free economy,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't really have a free economy properly without guardrails and without guarding institutions.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I look at China, and what I see is actually it is basically the only guardrails they have is basically the CCP. So if the CCP does something that is that institutionalize certain policies
Yeah.
and changes it tomorrow,
Yeah.
the whole economy can just
Okay. And this is probably where you hit it in the nail, right? And people get confused about it. I'm very lucky that I've had the chance of talking to Sir Paul Collier, and I've read all his books, right? And look at why, to an extent we are brothers, abang adik, Malaysia and Singapore, right? And why did Singapore probably race ahead where their economy is bigger than ours and they have a per capita income 5 times of ours, right? Why? And a lot of it has got to do with commonality of purpose, and they actually pull in one direction, whereas we are still divided in this country for a lot of reasons. And, and this one. So even in America, actually, when you look at Paul Collier's book, one of the interesting things I read was that there was a period of time, things which kept commonality of purpose was simple things like the Rotary clubs, things that, they all had a direction. Today, it seems terribly divided. I don't know if it's going to hamper them going forward. But in China, whatever it is in the last, after Deng Xiaoping's opening, there's definitely a clear purpose that they want to get wealthy, and everybody's on board. Yeah, everybody's on board. Now, going forward, who knows, right? Who knows? So if, and that's why it comes down to family, company, country, society. If you're all pulling in the same direction and for the good, generally things get done.
Yeah.
But if there's going to be fractures, and, like I said, you have GDP growth. But, if you talk about economy, right, I mean, we're all old enough to remember the internet. And I came to the same conclusion of this, right? But, of course, there's a much smarter guy called Bill Gates who said, I've never seen anything change as fast as this AI is changing the world. Internet doesn't even come close. Yeah, the fact is changing. So America is at the cutting edge of the AI boom, right? So they are obviously, whether who is president, probably that growth would have just taken off anyway, because we are at that inflection point. It's taking off. Yeah, and that's going to go on for some time now, right? So it's basically data centers being built. Forget the foundries and the chips and so on, programming, etc. And you ask me if I ask myself, this is my 2 cents, right? And then we believe this, and we're actually doing this in business, right? I think and just to diverge from this global topic and come back to Malaysia a little bit, and what does it mean for us as a country? That's where we started it and where it's happening. That boom in the AI business, whether it's going to come from China or America, who's debate, but it's probably America more. But we are users of the service. So today I've been on the latest version of Microsoft, which has Copilot, has ChatGPT 5 on it, right? And we can go into our data and we can pull out all our 20 years of data and really make use of it. Yeah. And that's something that, is coming good from what the US done. It's in the innovation that comes from the US, which spreads the wealth to the rest of the world, right? It does, yeah. Innovation, whether you're the poorest country in the world or what, the richest or whatever, the internet benefited every country in the world to an extent, some more than the others. And Malaysia, for me, we excel in services. We actually excel in services. Talk about healthcare, schools, private institutions. Our banks are second probably to just the Singapore banks. Our airlines are also probably second, or probably low cost. We're probably very good. We run very good airports. We run very good ports. We talk about Custom, Grab, Job Street. We are actually very, very good at services. And for us, if we can use technology a lot better, we will do well out of services. And that's probably where we have, our policymakers need to be encouraging this one. So a lot of small companies like us, we're running around. Today, I think with my staff, I can do 4 times more than what I could do just a year ago. And someone said, only 4 times? Actually, it's more than an AI guy, and he said, only 4 times? Yeah, so, I think there's a lot of good stuff going to happen. Like many things in the world, this is not, like you said, it's not COVID. It's not a second world war. Yeah. Climate change, I think, there may be more extreme climate, but, no one's going to cut their gas house emissions. That's ridiculous unless really it comes very desperate. So, like it or not, there's going to be no need for, you can't build wooden houses in California going forward if there's a forest fire. You have to build brick houses. That's it. You adapt. That's it, right?
Yeah. I've always said that.
Yeah.
That actually, the whole solution from humankind throughout the whole civilization is we adapt.
That's right.
We, and I mean, think about the emission standards that we had in our cars, right? From I was young, so late 60s, early 70s, to what we have today. It's of course the cars still can't fly, but
No, we're not too far away from that, right? we got drones which are probably want to launch drone taxi in China, I heard, or whatever it is. Yeah, not too far away. Self-driving cars are not too far away. Yeah. But so a lot of this boom will continue. Again, institutions. Why is America the most innovative country in the world? there's something right about it, right?
Yeah.
The ability to bring people in, etc. Because a lot of the rich people are the children of immigrants. Immigrants by nature, in my view, is very hard for the native to challenge the immigrant. It's because it's not that, a particular Chinese person is better than a local Southeast Asian, right? But the population of 1 billion or what, the fellow is willing to get up. His genes is somebody who is willing to get out from his kampong or his village, get on a boat, however risky it is to cross over the South China Sea or the Pacific to go to America, he's willing to do. So his gene pool is completely different.
There's also this.
But the fella in China who stayed back, probably the same gene pool as the Southeast Asian fella, no different.
Well, I find that actually the culture is such that there is an individualistic culture of meritocracy within the American society, and therefore the gene pool that, like everywhere else, what I see is 10% of the population is the only one that actually truly drives the economy.
Also in America,
correct?
I thought so.
So, I mean, if you've got 10% of your gene pool doing that part of a job from your from your own society, and then you add another 5% or even 3% of immigrant pool into that system.
Yeah, good ones, yeah.
Damn.
Which is what Donald's trying to create also. Yeah.
So
who do we
that
bring
is
in?
more than sufficient, because what you need is the rest of the 80% just doing the job or doing services or whatever, right? I mean, that is the nature of all society, if you ask me.
Yes and no. There's a part of this, the part of the elite society that matters. But there's also a part which we now know from, there's enough studies which shows this, that if average of the society is better educated, in fact, somebody was talking to me about India now, right? There's now a huge divide between North and South, right, in India. And if you look at places like Tamil Nadu versus Bihar, the level of education is completely different. And one is obviously, already richer than some of the Malaysian states, for example, and Tamil Nadu is richer than our poorer states, right? And so getting the average education up is also, I'm sure you agree, right? That's why we all send our kids to get better education and so on. So there's a part of that. And how do you get, that super smart, yeah? And even if I'm a super smart, Berkshire Hathaway's, what's his name? No, who's the richest? What's the investor?
Buffett.
Warren Buffett said, right? If he was born in Bangladesh, he'd never be rich. But there's something right about America that made him rich, right? There's, there's rule of law, there's institutions, there's an opportunity given to him, there's a very, very good capital market that you could, which you could invest in, etc. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that, allows that society to do well. So you start dismantling it. Yeah. No one is saying he's doing it, and I'm not saying that. But if you are ever doing it, then you will see a slowdown. You won't grow as fast as you could have.
I saw was, if you were to ask me prior when I think I paid more attention around probably 2018, because I think things were slowing down with the COVID and all that, so it allowed me a lot more attention to pay to look at the outside world, and to me what I saw was actually, if the policies of the Democratic Party, what I saw was it's really not pro business. It was taxing, it was spending, and that was and also I think the immigration part was a big issue, right? That bogs down society. It is a cost on society that you don't need, and that's what happened with Europe. And I mean, actually, if you listen to Trump's speech the other day at the UN, wow, he was that blunt on UK and
Germany.
and Germany, yeah, and to a certain extent France. I mean, you've been to, what's the percentage like nowadays? I mean, with respect to immigration or this asylum. Percentage
I don't know,
of the
but
population.
when you talk about reform and you think about it and institutions, right? That's critical. I mean, immigration. I mean, like it or not. I mean, if you ever go back to the period of the 1930s, right? And there's also, we must also be mindful, people are also looking for scapegoats, right? There's many factors involved, right? So immigrants can easily come, it can easily come something that people start talking about and, start persecuting and so forth. So this part of it, you have to be fairly careful. There's so much conspiracy theory. Let's not the poor take the vaccines. So they get ill, and therefore we can control them. Now again. So when we don't have proof of this, then we can start talking like this. That's why I say I don't want to get involved in those kind of discussions, right? But what we do know is, right, if you can attract talent, Singapore has. Yeah. California has.
Well, you can't do. You're right.
So you can do that.
Let's put it this way: Singapore will never allow illegal immigration. They are very, very strict.
Yeah, but it's 16 by 25 lah.
Right.
Yeah,
but they will allow legal immigrant. And in order for you to become a legal immigrant, you've got to prove either from what's your worth monetarily or actually talent-wise.
Yeah.
Or even if you come into the labor pool, there is a system that they have in order for you to take over the jobs. But when you have free flow of immigrants, that's a different story,
so again, and it's the same issue we face in this country, right?
Exactly.
So, someone tells me, people are lazy. You try driving a Grab, my friend, on a motorbike. Go and try lah. How hard do those bad fellas work?
Yeah.
Okay? Don't tell us Malaysians are lazy. That's stupid talking. Yeah, that's stupid talk. Right? Let's be clear about it. Stupid talk. But you can't ask Malaysians to go and live in a house at 30 people in filthy conditions. 15 sleep one half of the day and another 15 sleep another half of the day.
Yeah, the Pakistanis and
Indians
the Banglas
can do that. So, that's not fair, right? So if I want to just hire somebody because it's cheaper and they're willing to live in a standard which is not aligned to what we expect of standard living in Malaysia, and employers are getting away with it, that's nonsense, right? So like what they're doing there is you pay a large levy to come in. So if Mr. A, this one is truly clever and can do 5 times the work, then he shouldn't have a problem paying, a double the salary of what he is paying as a levy to the government. Yeah, and then that manages the economy so that we have people who can do it. And if you continue to have cheap labor, then what's the incentive to automate the palm oil?
You basically suppress wages.
Yeah, you suppress wages. So again, there must be a point, but every time we try to do that, then there's some bloody lobbying goes on. And so don't say lobbies in this one. Oh, I can't make money because there's no for this one. Okay, fine. You don't shock the system now. Fair enough. You tell, maybe the policy should be, 3 years we'll give you like this one. But I want to see what's your investment in innovation to reduce labor in certain areas. Yeah?
Actually, here's the funny part, which is the things that I saw the Democrat do and how the result of what they were doing actually so mirrors what I see the problems that we face here, including immigration, where actually the money is being made because of these illegal immigrations, right? So, that's what I see. I mean, even when you talk about extremist ideology, for example, right? Where does it start? It starts in school, it starts in, and then it goes through academia right up to the tertiary education. I mean, it's probably more real for me because I'm in that culture, right? And I see the same thing. I wouldn't send my kid for a liberal arts education in the United States anymore because I think it's an ideological dumpster fire, right? That's my opinion.
Yeah, but at least you have the right to choose, and that's what it's all about.
That's
right?
exactly.
That's what it's about, right? So I think it's probably here. I have to run shortly, but I think we talked a lot of things around this, and it comes back to the bottom issue, right? For businesses, and you started the conversation around, what does it mean for businesses?
Yeah.
And where does it make for policymakers? I think in the end of the day, there is a balance, right? Perhaps they are doing, this thing now appeals in America, to be read to more right, because you say 20 years of being very left is not working. Yeah, and they want to shift it. But I also say there's another side of the coin. On the since the 1980s, has the pendulum shifted too much for the wealthy, and there could be a backlash on that. All things for policy.
Maybe this is the backlash to it.
It can be, the backlash can be in many ways, right? I mean, some would say, because Obama came president, it was a huge backlash because of race issues. I mean, I've not done a study, but again, there's many this one, right? Thoughts on this. And like I said, unfortunately, unless you can find me alternative universe where I can put Kamala Harris as president, we can't come to a conclusive answer. What did Donald Trump do right or wrong?
Well, I say
I mean, conclusive. I said, absolutely. Of course, we'll have views and opinions and professional opinions.
Well, I think the result of it will probably see conclusively like anything else we do in business, right? You can start implementing your policy in business today. Your result is going to be 2 years down the road, to be honest, where you can say, absolutely, I'm seeing the result. You probably can see you're on the right track within the first year.
But Donald Trump did nothing about the AI. It came long before him. He's got nothing to do with it. And that could just generate America's wealth without anything, right? So you can't say, even one of the things that really surprised me, and I said I was a big Mrs. Thatcher fan, right? And then all the...
You probably got a lot of eggs on your face.
No, I didn't at all. But, I just kept a low profile and had one good friend, which we talked about, the good thing she was doing. And that was about it, right? Even till today, you talk about it, people say bad. But actually, I have an open mind because one of the things that they all, condemned about the Labour government and James Callaghan and people like that, until I listened to the history, a podcast on economic history. And actually, the reason why the UK had run into a deficit, of course, there are other problems that Mr. Thatcher said probably true, was actually before 1970, actually could buy oil in sterling. I never knew that, right? And of course, with the inflationary problem and the Arabs refused to take sterling, it's hugely disadvantage. The other thing is, actually, one of the reasons why UK ran into a huge deficit is they didn't have ability to produce oil. So they had to import a lot of machinery and plant and equipment to get the North Sea going, apparently, right? So Mrs. Thatcher came Prime Minister and the North Sea oil boomed.
Yes.
How much is it her policy and how much is it North Sea oil boom, right? Unless you actually... There are ways and techniques now to take out, to back out all these factors. And somebody can do the study and back out the effect of AI. It's possible to study, and then you can see it really these policies really work on us, and it'll probably be a debate, years and years later. It won't be immediate. Yeah.
On that balance, I would say, how much is it AI? How much is it deregulation plus tariffs plus lowering of taxes?
Yeah.
So that's
Okay, so the lowering of taxes depends at which period of time. If it was very high and you started bringing it down, possible, like Ronald Reagan did, possible. Yeah, it is possible. Or
which he did in his first term.
Yeah, and Mrs. Thatcher did as well. So that's possible. Deregulation, you don't even have to go so far. You just come to Malaysia. Mahathir, when the economy crashed in the late 80s.
Absolutely.
And, all the sacred cows could be done, but he did it very cleverly. Calls it FTZ, doesn't have to follow, NEP policies. And what happened? We had a super boom in the 90s.
Yeah. In fact, I think one of the biggest boom that the EU may have, if only they could dismantle all the regulations that that Brussels has put on.
Okay, so there's a great experiment there, right?
Yeah.
The experiment is UK broke away.
Yeah.
And are they going to do so well in the next 10 to 20 years? Now, of course, they got a Labour government, and some would say very anti. This one they had Rishi Sunak stayed on as Prime Minister. They probably would be in a much better position. But the good thing is UK has institutions. And what's democracy is all about is the right to change government without violence. So come another 3 years, if this continuation of business unfriendly policies continues, they're going to be out.
Yeah.
And the new guy comes and takes advantage. They're not stuck with the bureaucracy. You should see UK grow much, much faster than the rest of Europe. Great experiment, right? Because there's a hard cut-off point, and we'll see how it goes.
I have a gut feeling, probably the EU is going to react faster than the UK for some reason. I don't know. Chuang, you've been pretty quiet.
I've been a keen observer and consumer of the two opinions here. What I'm struggling to understand is what is the point that essentially we started the discussion on I think institutions, and I think we're trying to understand whether America is in the right direction, right? And so I think we went down to the last few minutes of your time here. So, in summation, what is your opinion?
I started where I started, right? It's just basically, in the short term, at least for the U.S. domestic economy, it might be better. They might see things that they're going to be happier about. In the long term, it's going to be challenging. For the rest of us in the rest of the world, in the short term, we are being shocked. We are on the receiving end.
Yep.
And we have to run faster. But probably we might benefit from it. Who knows? I've always had issues on somehow some certificates are given out in Malaysia, and they made us to say allow that, and that's been good. So we'll have to adapt harder, and we might be the bigger beneficiary. Who knows?
Well, if we adapt, if we are forced to adapt,
we are being forced in certain aspects. If we are forced
to adapt, and we are able to adapt.
Yeah, we might be the beneficiary.
We would definitely be the beneficiary. Yeah. That's why, that's my advocacy of it. Yeah.
So like I said, where we started, in the short term, that's going to happen. Long term, generally the sciences or the research shows that, getting rid of good institutions is not a good idea. And I don't think that's very hard to decide. Whether which institution is good and bad, there are question marks, right? Like the United Nations and all, and what's going on. But it's the only forum where you can go and discuss a problem, right?
Yeah. Well,
you're getting rid of it. It's not probably.
I don't think the idea is to rid itself of the United Nations. They are again. It always comes back to this about institutions. It's you can have good institutions, but lousy content.
Just on the last word on immigration, let me just give you one last thing on it.
Right.
You guys got us, like you said, corruption and institutions, right? You definitely need to close the doors, that's my thing. It should make it very difficult for people to come. But what the developed world, the US and things like that, and you're talking about adapting, is to make it better for those countries to not send people out. That's why you didn't have a whole rush of people from the Western Europe, after the Second World War. Devastation cannot be worse than that, lah.
Yeah.
But nobody ran away because America put the money in, and they turned around Western Europe, and to an extent, even parts of Eastern Europe after the. So again, that rule and that game, you still have to play it, but play it properly to create what was done success. And it can be done successfully.
Well, the fact that we are losing people, that tells a lot as well.
No, for those. If I'm in Sudan, I whatever needs Sudan, I don't want to get on a boat and go to England.
No, you think about it, right?
Yeah.
As you rightly put, outside of Singapore and Malaysia, if you look at Southeast Asia,
probably Vietnam.
We are the two best economies and
Probably
effective
Vietnam,
economies, right?
Yeah, probably Vietnam.
And yet we are having brain drain. They don't go on sampans like Indonesia coming over here, but they fly on.
But this is one of the biggest challenges for this one, because it's a lot easier to get out of the countries now and go somewhere else, because there are global agencies which you can do AI. I can sit in Bali and work for Google, who's nothing stopping me, Yeah. So a lot of people are, just going to the.
Well, but physically people are leaving.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, and there must be a
Middle
reason
East.
for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, sir. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That was
Fun
most enlightening.
Yeah, I do. It's nice to talk to my friend here, who's very knowledgeable, and it's a very. We
only opinions, lah.
Yeah,
only
and
opinions.
That's
we
what
haven't
we
done
are here all about.
Just opinions.
Thanks, Ravi.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it very
for
much.
giving me the opportunity, both of y'all. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.